Baalbek, which is located in Lebanon, and I had the great privilege of going there in September of last year, exactly 1 month before things kicked off in Israel. But Baalbek, if there was one example, one ancient site on Earth that is evidence of a lost, ancient, advanced civilization,
Baalbek, Lebanon has remained one of the most enduring mysteries on planet Earth.
There's a place in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon where the ground holds a secret so enormous, so structurally overwhelming, that the engineers and archaeologists who study it carefully choose their words before speaking about it in public. It is a place where tourists arrive with cameras and leave with confusion, where Roman columns still pierce a blue Mediterranean sky, and where 6 stones buried in the earth beneath those columns refuse, stubbornly and completely, to be explained away. That place is Baalbek. And what lies beneath it may be the single greatest unsolved engineering mystery on the surface of this planet. Baalbek sits roughly 86 kilometers northeast of Beirut, elevated on the Bekaa Plain at about 1,170 meters above sea level. Archaeological evidence confirms that human beings have lived at this location for at least 9,000 years. Some estimates push that figure toward 11,000 years. That means people were gathering at this site during the Neolithic period, before writing existed, before bronze had been smelted, before the first Egyptian pharaoh drew a single breath. The Phoenicians called it Baalbek, the city of Baal, their chief deity. They regarded it as sacred ground, a place where the divine and the physical world intersected. When the Greeks arrived, they renamed it Heliopolis, the city of the sun, attaching it to their most luminous gods. When Rome eventually extended its reach into the eastern Mediterranean around 15 BCE, Roman engineers looked at what was already there and made a decision that tells us something important. They built on top of it. The Romans constructed what became one of the most ambitious temple complexes in their entire empire at this site. The Temple of Jupiter, their centerpiece, once featured 54 granite columns standing 22 meters tall. Only 6 of those columns remain standing today, the others having succumbed to earthquakes, wars, and centuries of slow collapse. But here's where things become genuinely strange. While those Roman columns fell, repeatedly, catastrophically, across 2 millennia of seismic violence, the platform beneath them did not move. Not once, not measurably, not at all. Embedded within the western retaining wall of the Temple of Jupiter's podium, at approximately 6 meters above the base course, sit 3 limestone blocks, collectively known as the trilithon. The name is straightforward Greek, 3 stones. But nothing else about them is straightforward. Each block of the trilithon measures roughly 19 meters in length, approximately 4.2 meters in height, and around 3.6 meters in depth. The estimated weight of each individual stone falls between 750 and 800 metric tons. To put that in perspective, the largest stones incorporated into the Great Pyramid at Giza weigh approximately 80 tons. The famous sarsen stones of Stonehenge reach around 25 tons. The marble blocks of the Parthenon in Athens average roughly 10 tons. Each single block of the trilithon outweighs a Stonehenge sarsen by a factor of 30. They were quarried from limestone hillsides approximately 900 meters from the temple site. Somewhere between the quarry and their current position, someone lifted them roughly 6 meters into the air and set them in place with a precision that modern surveyors find difficult to believe. The joints between adjacent blocks are so tight that a sheet of paper cannot be slid between them. No mortar was used, no filler of any kind. The stone simply meets stone in a contact so complete that 2,000 years of seismic activity have not widened the gap by any measurable amount. Jean-Pierre Adam, a French archaeologist and specialist in Roman construction, documented this site extensively and published his analysis in the academic journal Syria in 1977. His examination of the transport problem acknowledged that moving stones of this mass required solutions at the extreme outer boundary of what Roman engineering could theoretically accomplish, involving systems of timber framing, earthen ramps, and organized labor on a scale Rome rarely deployed, even for its most prestigious projects. The trilithon itself would be mystery enough. But the quarry 900 meters away from the temple contains something that changes the entire scale of the conversation. The stone of the pregnant woman, known locally as Hajar el-Hibla, has been visible to visitors for centuries. It sits partially exposed in the ancient quarry, a limestone monolith measuring approximately 20.76 meters long, 4 meters wide, and 4.32 meters thick, with an estimated weight of around 1,000 metric tons. It was never transported to the temple. It lies in the quarry where it was cut, still partly connected to the bedrock, abandoned at some point during a process that was never completed. In the 1990s, archaeologists rediscovered a second enormous stone in the same quarry, the Stone of the South, or Hajar el-Jubal, which had been forgotten to such a degree that its very location had been lost to researchers for some time. The Stone of the South weighs an estimated 1,242 metric tons, making it heavier than its neighbor. Then, in 2014, a team from the German Archaeological Institute conducted systematic excavations in that same quarry and found something that nobody expected. Buried beneath the surface, positioned next to and partially beneath the stone of the pregnant woman, lay a third megalith. Janine Abdul-Masih, who led the Lebanese archaeological mission and later published her findings in the Journal of Eastern Mediterranean Archaeology and Heritage Studies in 2015, directed the excavations that revealed its full dimensions: 19.6 meters long, 6 meters wide, and at least 5.5 meters thick, with a weight estimated at approximately 1,500 metric tons. In some calculations, pushing toward 1,650 metric tons. This stone, now called the Forgotten Stone, or the Third Monolith, is the largest precisely worked stone block ever documented in the archaeological record of human civilization. It is still in the quarry. It never moved. 3 sides of it were cut cleanly and deliberately. It was ready for transport, and then whoever was moving it simply stopped. Numbers of this magnitude lose their impact quickly if you do not anchor them to something tangible. So consider this carefully. The largest mobile cranes operating in the world today, the kind deployed to assemble skyscrapers, lift prefabricated bridge sections, and install offshore wind turbines, have operational lifting capacities that typically max out around 1,200 metric tons under ideal conditions. Those conditions require flat, reinforced ground, elaborate rigging configurations, and teams of engineers monitoring every stage of the lift. The Liebherr LTM 11200 to 9.1, one of the most powerful mobile cranes ever manufactured, has a maximum lifting capacity of 1,200 metric tons. The Forgotten Stone weighs more than that. The trilithon blocks, each weighing between 750 and 800 metric tons, are within range, but only barely, only under perfect modern conditions, and only with machinery that runs on diesel engines, steel cables, and hydraulic systems that did not exist in the ancient world. Understanding what was actually accomplished at Baalbek requires sitting with that gap honestly, not dismissing it, not inflating it with supernatural explanations, but simply acknowledging that it represents a genuine engineering problem that has not been fully resolved by conventional scholarship. Rome kept records. This is not a minor point. The Roman administrative apparatus was one of the most thorough bureaucratic systems the ancient world produced. Tax rolls survive. Military supply inventories survive. Imperial edicts and their dates survive. Maintenance records for infrastructure survive from provinces across the entire span of the empire. We know, from epigraphy and historical records, that Emperor Augustus initiated construction at Baalbek around 15 BCE. We know that significant work continued under Nero, Domitian, and Trajan. We know that the most intensive phase of temple construction appears to have been overseen during the reign of Antoninus Pius in the 2nd century CE. Scholars such as Jean-Pierre Adam and Friedrich Reget, who published his architectural analysis of the site in 1980, have documented the Roman phases of Baalbek's construction with considerable precision. But here is the gap that researchers consistently return to. For the trilithon, the single greatest feat of stone movement in the Roman world, outweighing every other documented example of Roman large stone construction by an enormous margin, There is no dedicatory inscription. No emperor claimed credit. No general attached his name to the achievement. No commemorative record in any form has been found that specifically references the movement and placement of these blocks. Roman engineers carved their names into bridges in Wales. They documented aqueduct repairs in North Africa. They left inscriptions boasting about road construction in Anatolia. But for the largest stones they ever supposedly moved by a factor of 10 or more, there is silence. Whether that silence represents a gap in the archaeological record or something more significant is a question scholars continue to debate. The platform beneath the Roman temples is not uniform in its construction. Anyone who examines the site carefully, and several generations of archaeologists have done exactly that, can observe that the megalithic foundation and the Roman superstructure above it represent two distinct construction phases. The cutting techniques differ. The scale differs dramatically, and the weathering patterns on the lower megalithic stones show a degree of surface erosion measurably greater than the Roman stones placed on top of them. This observation is not fringe archaeology. It is visible in the site itself. There are tunnels beneath the temple platform where this distinction is clearly readable in the physical stratigraphy. Megalithic stonework at the lower level, Roman stonework above it, with visible differences in construction approach between the two. What this means, at minimum, is that the Romans built their temples on a platform that already existed. Whether that platform was built by the Romans themselves in an earlier phase of construction, by the Phoenicians who occupied the site before them, by some Bronze Age civilization of which we have fragmentary records, or by a people entirely unknown to us, is a question that genuinely remains open. Mainstream scholarship generally attributes the entire complex, including the megalithic foundation, to Roman construction. Alternative researchers point to the weathering differences and the absence of Roman documentation as evidence of a pre-Roman origin for the platform itself. What no serious researcher disputes is that the site is physically layered, that it was considered sacred by every civilization that occupied it, and that the lower stone layers represent an engineering accomplishment without close parallel anywhere in the ancient world. The Baalbek Valley sits in a seismically active region. The Dead Sea Transform fault system runs through Lebanon, and major earthquakes have affected the area repeatedly throughout recorded history. Baalbek itself was damaged by significant seismic events across the centuries. The 54 columns of the Temple of Jupiter are now reduced to 6 standing examples. Yet the trilithon blocks have not moved. After more than 2,000 years of seismic loading, the joints between these 800-ton limestone blocks remain as tight as they were when the stones were placed. Engineers who have examined the assembly using modern laser measurement technology have noted that the contact surfaces between blocks appear to have been engineered in a way that allows the structure to respond to seismic stress without failing, distributing the forces across the joint surfaces rather than concentrating them at vulnerable points. Whether this reflects a deliberate seismic engineering strategy or an emergent property of simply fitting very large, very heavy stones together with exceptional precision is a question that remains technically unresolved. What can be stated clearly is that the performance of these stones across 2 millennia of seismic activity is remarkable by any measure, and that the Roman columns built above the same foundation did not share in that resilience. Perhaps the most genuinely puzzling aspect of Baalbek is not the stones that made it to the temple. It is the 3 that did not. The stone of the pregnant woman, the stone of the south, and the forgotten stone were all quarried, cut with precision on at least 3 sides, and prepared for transport. None of them arrived at the temple complex. They sit today essentially where the people who cut them left them, separated from their destination by 900 meters of ground they never crossed. Researchers from the German Archaeological Institute have suggested that the forgotten stone may have been abandoned because inspection revealed a flaw in the stone's edge that would have made it vulnerable to cracking during transport, a discovery that, after months of quarrying labor, would have been devastating but would have made continued effort pointless. This is a credible and rational explanation for the abandonment of that specific stone, but it raises a parallel question. If even the most powerful and organized civilization of the ancient world found the transport of these stones so difficult that it sometimes abandoned the attempt entirely, what does that tell us about the achievement represented by the stones that did make it into the wall? The trilithon blocks were moved 900 meters across terrain that was not flat and lifted 6 meters into the air to a precision of millimeters. That happened. The physical evidence is there in the western retaining wall of the Temple of Jupiter. The gap between what we know was done and our ability to fully explain how it was done is the space where Baalbek's mystery lives. It is worth separating clearly what the evidence actually establishes from what remains genuinely uncertain. What we know. The Baalbek stones are 6 massive worked stone blocks in Lebanon characterized by a megalithic gigantism unparalleled in antiquity. The trilithon stones are so precisely aligned that it is impossible to fit a sheet of paper between them. The forgotten stone, measuring 19.6 by 6 by 5.5 meters, is estimated to weigh about 1,497 tons and was discovered in the quarry in 2014 by archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute. Archaeological evidence indicates human presence at Baalbek dating back at least 11,000 years, placing potential early construction activity in prehistoric times. What remains debated? Who specifically built the megalithic foundation, whether the Romans built the entire platform or constructed on an earlier structure, and precisely how stones of 800 tons or more were moved across 900 meters of uneven terrain and raised 6 meters into the air. Conventional scholarship holds that Baalbek's temples were built in the early Roman imperial period, though alternative interpretations propose a far more ancient origin for the megalithic foundations. Both positions have serious researchers attached to them. Both engage with the same physical evidence and reach different conclusions about what that evidence means. There is a reason Baalbek has captivated researchers, engineers, historians, and travelers for generations. It is not simply the scale of the stones, though the scale is genuinely extraordinary. It is not simply the precision of their placement, though that